Hey guys, and welcome back to a new season and back at it with Let's Talk Liverpool. Hope you guys have had a great summer, even though it was shorter in terms of a football sense of number of weeks we had without football. I'm not complaining. I'm great to see football back. I'm super happy to see Liverpool playing again, playing in big games, playing against some of the biggest teams in the world. And yeah, I'm just really excited to see what this season brings. Obviously, the break has been shorter than we would have wanted, or than the Liverpool would have wanted, but we've had a bit of a longer break given that we were already out of Europe, and so I didn't have to go to the bubble to play in the Champions League, which actually I think as we move on later throughout the season could actually be a big win for us, particularly at the beginning as well. I think with some of the other teams not necessarily having the same amount of time to do all of their preparation as we would, but the first game of the season, the first Let's Talk Liverpool of this season, is for the Community Shield final. It's called a final. Obviously, there's no games to it, but the Community Shield final, we'll call it. Slightly different circumstances to what it would normally be. Obviously, it would be a packed-out crowd at Wembley. You know, for a game like Arsenal versus Liverpool, you would expect no empty seats in the house, but there was 90,000 empty seats in the house today, as all of the fans from around the world watched on TV. And whereas previously it's always talked about the Community Shield being a pre-season game, this year it really did feel like a pre-season game. Very much with both teams not having huge amounts of pre-season, both time and games. Before, Liverpool were a little bit further ahead in that cycle than Arsenal were. But for both teams, it's still very early in their pre-season, and we do now still have a couple of weeks before the Premier League really kicks off in earnest with Arsenal's game against Fulham. But it was a chance for a trophy. Liverpool have been trophy hunting for the past couple of seasons, and as Klopp says, every trophy up there is one that we want to win. And this was very much one that we wanted to win. But unfortunately, obviously, you guys watching this, most probably know the result. We unfortunately weren't able to get the win. But that doesn't mean there weren't a lot of talking points from this game and positives that Liverpool could take out. At the beginning of the game, we made an okay start. I think we kind of settled into the game in the first 5-10 minutes. We obviously had the early goal disallowed for offside. It was a great cross from Andy Robertson from a free kick, but Virgil van Dijk just kind of half of his body was offside. No complaints about the offside, but yeah, it was a good start. We'd settled into the game fairly well, not really creating any huge chances or anything, but just settling into the game, getting ourselves into the groove. And then 12 minutes in, we were hit with the kind of the blow of an Arsenal counter-attack, which they did really, really well towards the end of the last season, which is why they essentially ended up going on and winning the FA Cup. And it was great play from Bukayo Saka down the right up against Andrew Robertson, cutting in on his left foot and then spraying the ball out beautifully to Aubameyang. And Aubameyang cutting on his right foot. We've seen that before. Everyone's seen it before. We know that's kind of his trademark finish. And he was able to beautifully set the ball out just outside Alisson and bend it into the far corner. And you know what? Fair play to Aubameyang. That was a really, really good goal. I think looking at it again, looking at the replays and the highlights, I think Nico Williams probably could have done better to one, get tighter and a bit closer to Aubameyang. I think obviously, Williams was kind of slightly afraid of his pace, as he should be. We don't want to get too tight because then he could just get done super easily. But I think he could have got a bit closer, and then by getting closer, he could have helped show him onto his left foot a bit more easily than he did. Because we all know once Aubameyang gets to his left foot, he's not as effective at all as he is on his right foot. But I'm not really going to go too harsh on Nico Williams. He's still in that process of learning. I want to support him and make sure we give him the encouragement, because I really think, given a good season where he plays regularly, I do think he could challenge Trent. And I think the more he plays in games like this against big players like Aubameyang, the more he'll learn. Trent Alexander-Arnold was in this exact same thing. If you remember 2 seasons ago, we were talking about, can Trent defend? If he's really going to be the long-term right back, can he defend? And he's shown that by playing consistently against the best players in the league and across Europe, that he can actually defend, and that's why he's become so integral to our back four. But once Arsenal scored in the first half, we were very subdued. We didn't really create any chances. We didn't really test Emi Martinez. We had a couple of nice little bits of flicks and nice little bit of play between Firmino and Sadio Mane. But I think the two things that I kind of took out from the first half was, in particular, down both in our midfield and down the right, where I think were the areas where we were lacking the most. So if I start in the midfield, I think we were just lacking that kind of creativity as we talk about, and that type of more forward-looking energy. We had the starting lineup of Gini Wijnaldum, James Milner, and Fabinho in that midfield, and those are great players. We know what they can do, and I think Klopp went with those for experience in the midfield. But they were kind of lacking that creative guile that we had sitting on the bench in Naby Keita and even Curtis Jones, and we saw that kind of improve a bit more in the second half, but. Yeah, I think that in the midfield is where we obviously had an industrious midfield, but we weren't kind of playing those balls forward quick enough into the front three as we could have done. And Andy Robertson really looked like our kind of best outlet in the first half. I also think down the right, the chemistry that Trent Alexander-Arnold has with Mo Salah, and he knows when Trent's going to make a run out on the outside. And then Mo knows when he's going to make a run out the outside, so Trent doesn't do the same run. They have that type of chemistry that I just don't think Nico Williams and Mohamed Salah have, and I think we kind of struggled a bit there down the right hand side with Mo Salah being quite isolated and not really getting into the game in the first half. The second half, though, was a little bit of a different story. We knew, obviously, we needed to step things up. We hadn't tested Emi Martinez at all, and the Arsenal defence, fair play to them, they were looking very, very solid. Just goes to show how much of a good job Mikel Arteta has done since he came in. But in the second half, as I said, we know we needed to step it up, and that's exactly what we did. We continued to apply pressure. We weren't just making one chance, we were making 2, 3, 4 chances. And it was that kind of continued applied pressure, which is what I think essentially led to our goal. It was a great bit of play, nice little flicks and tricks between Bobby Firmino, Mo Salah, and Takumi Minamino. There was a little bit of luck in it, the ball bouncing off Salah into Takumi Minamino, who he was 3 yards out and just had to slot the ball past Emi Martinez. So it was a great goal for him, and I'm super, super happy for him that he got that goal. I think this season he can actually be a really, really big player for us, and I think now that he's had about 6 months to get used to Liverpool, get used to the Premier League, I really do think that this season will be a big season for Takumi Minamino. But yeah, there was definitely a bit of luck in that, and I think part of leading up to our dominance in the second half was around Arsenal's lack of physical fitness. I think before they're coming into this game, they've said they've only had very few number of training sessions. I think 4 or 5, I think it was, or maybe even less. And that we definitely did see that in the second half. That Liverpool, we were able to win the ball back. We were just running rings around them almost, and that kind of almost essentially led to Takumi Minamino's goal and to make it 1-1. After that, or immediately after that, it became apparent that Liverpool were going to, continue to press, win the ball back, create chances, and it looked like it was actually, it was only a matter of time before Liverpool went and got that second goal and made it 2-1. But actually, it was Arsenal in the last 10 or so minutes. Maybe they got a second wind or something like that, or maybe they got an extra bit of motivation from somewhere. But they looked like the ones more likely to score towards the end of the second half. They were pressing well. They brought on a couple of players. Reece Nelson, Joe Willock had a really good header which just went wide, and I think maybe it was that fresh energy that helped them as well. Looked like they were going to be the more likely ones to score at the end of the game rather than us. But alas, it did go to penalties. They weren't able to get the goal to give it 2-1 to them, and it was great pens all around. Well, I say great pens all around, but great pens apart from Rhian Brewster, who'd come on with about 30 seconds left, and actually his first touch was the penalty. He hadn't really got into the game. He just came on, ran around for a little bit, and that was pretty much it. It was then it was penalties, and so maybe that had something to do with it. I think it's a bit of a risk, obviously, bringing on a player with just, where he's not really going to get a chance to get into the game, and you're going to have to take a penalty. But maybe he stood up and volunteered himself. So that's the type of behaviours and stuff we want to encourage from the players and taking on that responsibility. But unfortunately for us this time, it meant that he missed a penalty, and we unfortunately lost the Community Shield. But I still think there was lots to learn from that game. I think I'll touch into a couple of the learnings and my shout out to Klopp for this episode. But before I jump into that, I want to just touch on a couple of the other things I think we learned. I think physically, I think we saw that even though we've had 2 weeks training out in Austria and we've had a couple of warm-up games, that we're still not there in terms of the intensity that Klopp likes to see from his players. And I think that will come with more training sessions, more match practice, etc. So I'm not worried about that, but I think it's still something that we want to see more of. I think the Nico Williams situation, again, is an interesting one. I think Trent's obviously missed out on most of the preseason so far. Klopp's given him a bit of an extended break, which he fully deserves. But I think the sooner we get Trent back into the team, that really helps us play and really makes us a kind of an all-rounded, balanced team that have been so successful over the past couple of seasons. And then I'll touch on the shout out to Klopp here, which was about the midfield. So as I talked about there, in the first half, we were kind of just lacking that creativity and guile in the middle of the park. And I think a lot of that was down to the type of players we had in. And we saw in the second half, particularly when Naby Keita came on, that Naby Keita was very much always looking to play a forward pass into the feet of Sadio Mane or Bobby Firmino or even Mo Salah, which is something I think we were missing in the first half. And it showed how much of a difference that made. That really kind of getting onto the Arsenal back three really, really quickly rather than just kind of playing out wide and then kind of just working across into the box. It did look like they had a tactic in the game of crossing the ball low. I don't know whether that's because we thought they were good in the air. Rob Holding and David Luiz were good in the air. I don't think they're the best in the air. So I'm not sure why Klopp would maybe, or the team would put that in as a specific tactic. But I think that midfield... The midfield, I don't think that specific midfield trio can work in the Premier League. I don't think we'll be successful with that trio. And obviously, we've got a couple of players injured. Jordan Henderson, Oxlade-Chamberlain, to name kind of the two most important players. But, I think that particular trio, I don't think will play. If we had a fully fit midfield, that trio wouldn't play. But I think, I would like to see one of Keita or even Curtis Jones, who I think came on and did really well when he did come on, play in that midfield, because I just think it gives us just something more moving forward and gives us that extra dimension, which makes us a little bit harder to play against, rather than always just going out wide and relying on a cross from Robertson or Trent like we've done for so long. And as I said, Takumi Minamino as well coming in from the left, playing a really good role and a fantastic goal from him, and I'm sure he will take steps and make good strides this season and contribute a lot in terms of goals and assists as well. But that's it for this episode, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube to the YouTube channel so you don't miss any videos, and also drop a follow if you're listening to this on any type of podcast platforms. But thank you guys for listening, and I'll catch you on the next episode of Let's Talk Liverpool.